Hello all, and thanks for joining us today in today's webinar. We have some exciting update and information and integration information from the folks at Kinnami. Most of you probably know me, but for those who don't, I'm Ray Zwiebelhofer, President of World Software Corporation. Since the pandemic hit, we all have different things we're focused on, and I believe you guys and your firms like us are focused on adding value. And I think this is the time we want to make sure that firms, and we hear it from our firms, that they want to get the most value out of the software they have. And as such, we've been doing Friday webinars to different ways that you can use Worldox within your firm, and then solution providers that have integrated with us for a while and truly brings Worldox to that next level. So I hope you all are having a great Friday, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what the team has to say here. So from there, Hella, take it over.
Okay, thank you, Ray. I'm Hella Schwartz-Grossman. I'm the marketing manager at Worldox. And as Ray said, we have these on Fridays, these webinars. And before we get started with today's webinar, there are a few housekeeping items. The webinar will be recorded and the link will be emailed to you afterwards. Right now, everyone is muted. And if you have any questions during the session, please type them into the GoToWebinar questions, and we'll address questions at the end of the webinar. Today, we will also open the microphone for a live discussion at the end. As Ray mentioned, our partner today is Kinnami Software, and our speakers today are Chris Chandler, founder and CTO, Sujeesh Krishnan, CEO, and Jim Burke, project coordinator at Kinnami. Chris is the founder and CTO of Kinnami. He's a data storage expert with over 20 years experience in information security and data protection by working at Veritas and Symantec. More recently, Chris has spent time working on novel ways to protect valuable information and has launched Kinnami to bring these ideas to market. Sujeesh Krishnan is the CEO at Kinnami. He's a serial entrepreneur. He has over 20 years of experience leading strategy, sales, market development, and product management in the high-tech technology sector. Jim Burke is the project coordinator and director of business development at Kinnami. He has worked in a variety of sectors prior to joining the company and has over 20 years business development experience. Join the Kinnami team as they show you how its distributed data security platform can protect Worldox clients' data from breaches, ransomware attacks, and facilitate remote work, bring your own device, and temporary workers, ensure regulatory compliance on all your devices, and with everyone you need to collaborate or share files with. Thank you in advance for the attention you'll be giving this webinar today. Jim, Chris, Sujeesh, it's handing it all over to you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that great introduction, Hella. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I'm Jim Burke with Kinnami, and I'm in charge of business development. Today, what we're going to do is I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the problems that we are seeing out in the marketplace and we're looking to address. We're going to be doing a brief snapshot or give you a visual of an actual demo of our tools working inside a Worldox environment. And then we're going to just kind of talk about, what a Worldox integration would look like and the benefits that it would bring to you and your end users. So the problem. So there's, if you just kind of look at the landscape, there are so many different solutions out there around that has all evolved into what is called IT security at this point. So you have solutions around endpoints and protection around endpoints and protection around data and protection around storage. But the problem is that they're all single solutions, and none of them are integrated together, and this leaves tremendous gaps in coverage. If you think about it, if you're a storage solution, you're not so worried about endpoints. And if you're an endpoint solution, you're not so worried about storage. And when it comes to data availability, how we use data, where being able to collaborate and share files with others, none of them really take that into account. And that's the key, is that, how do we secure all this data, which is your most valuable asset when you need to do all these things with it. So if we just look at the landscape out there, the rate and scale of breaches is growing exponentially. The other thing that I think you need to take notice of is the nature of them is evolving. You can see all the different sectors. One of the biggest sectors that is growing is unknown. And so what that means is they don't know exactly where these threats are coming from, and that just keeps increasing. A lot of these different breaches, you can be infected or have somebody in your systems, and they can lurk there until they really find something valuable to take advantage of. So there's a lot of things that are unknown out there, and protecting your data is more valuable than ever, or more important than ever. And so if you just look at the costs around this, the costs are skyrocketing. In the legal sector, there have been a number of notable breaches, and they've been expensive from both a financial standpoint and also from a reputational standpoint. And if you look at the vast majority of Worldox clients, they don't have a whole IT department to manage all this. So Worldox, to their credit, is being very proactive about addressing these issues and then working with us to bring value to their clients. So the other thing that has happened here, as we mentioned earlier, is that in this COVID environment, remote work has absolutely increased the problems around these issues. Now you have more people working at the edge, having to tap into a variety of networks using different devices, and all of that has just increased the attack surface for bad actors. And then if you look at cloud and 5G and Internet of Things devices, we're seeing all sorts of different challenges around them to protect data and privacy around them, and it's just another entry point into potentially attacking your data. So all of these things really put everybody in a bunch of peril, and while it may not be a problem today, it will be at some point, and being proactive on this is going to make all the difference. So at Kinnami, what we do is we deliver a data security, protection, and availability platform in a single integrated solution. And this is what we're looking to deploy inside Worldox. And so with that, I'm going to just turn the screen over to Chris Chandler, who is our CTO, who's going to show you how this works in Worldox.
Okay, Jim, can you make me the presenter, please?
Here we go.
Apologies for the delay, folks. Until 30 minutes ago, there wasn't going to be a demo because we had a power cut in here in Massachusetts with the snow arrived. So I also had to scramble to put all this thing together again. So we didn't rehearse it quite as much as we would like.
Did you just take over, Chris? I think you're now on.
Here we go. I got it now. Now the next trick is to find the right screen. It's that one. Okay. With any luck, you can all now see a screen that contains a Windows 10 desktop inside it. Yes, thumbs up, anybody? Okay, great. All right. Okay, good, thank you. So thank you, Jim. So really, this is going to be a very quick demonstration. What we're trying to show you here is that it's all very well to have more technology like data security and data protection and data availability, but at the end of the day, that doesn't actually, I mean, it's important and so forth, but lawyers don't want it getting in the way of their work. And so what we're trying to show you here today is a Worldox environment that has been integrated with AmiShare, which is our reliable data platform, resilient data platform. And what we're going to show you here is that actually Worldox, to all intents and purposes, works almost unchanged. So what I'm going to show you is a very simple Worldox activity, and then I'm going to show you what's happening behind the scenes and to show you a little bit of the magic. So first of all, this is a very standard Windows 10 desktop, which many of you hopefully have used before, with Worldox. And as you might expect, so Worldox is installed on this in the usual way. You can recognize the icons. If I bring it up, here it is. And we've got some documents, and here I am reviewing this one. So what I can do now is edit a document, and when I do that, I double click on it. Worldox does its thing and then opens Microsoft Word, I hope. Oh, let's me try another one. I was just testing it with another document. Maybe I've broken something else. Okay, let's try that again. So, well, here we go. Microsoft Word opens up in its usual way. And we can edit our document when we're started. So this is a rental agreement. This is a rental agreement that has been changed by Chris, for example. So we save it in the usual way. It saves the document. And when I bring back Worldox Desktop, as you can see, you probably can't read this, but the review of this thing actually shows that the document has been changed. So to all intents and purposes, that was very typical Worldox. But what I want to show you is that actually under the hood, things are different. But Worldox worked. If you're a lawyer using Worldox, everything I showed you hopefully is stuff that you've seen before, without the little glitch, by the way. So, but under the hood, I'm actually using a Unix server to stop running AmiShare to store the data. So if I remove the curtain, and we can now see what's going on behind the Wizard of Oz's curtain. And actually what we have here is the actual data store that Worldox is using. And this is actually the document that we just edited. And if I double click on it in here, you will see that indeed, come on, it's a bit slow because it's being a bit hammered here. Here we go. I'll get rid of all these extra dialog boxes that are being alert. You'll see that this is again the same document. This is a rental agreement. This has been changed by Chris. Now, the reason why this person can actually see the document is this person is actually logged in with the same identity as the Windows desktop. And the username is demo. But if I switch to another user, so if I'm now going to log in here, this is on the Unix server, remember? So this is your system administrator. Now let's say this system administrator, his name's Chris. Now when he tries to open the Worldox information store, which is here, no such luck. And that's basically the point here. What we're trying to show you is that Worldox is running as you expect in its normal way, but under the hood, AmiShare is providing some fairly tough security to protect the documents wherever they're stored. So that the idea is that your productivity is not being destroyed or damaged by this additional technology. But actually now you're the administrators of your environment, which may be your office manager, for example, somebody who doesn't really do this, isn't an IT professional, doesn't do this full time. They now have a bit more confidence that they're actually able to secure the documents that the lawyers are using. And that concludes the demonstration. So I'll just, there we go, cover now restored. Jim, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Okay.
Change presenter. Jim Burke. Make Jim the presenter. Very good.
Okay, so thank you very much, Chris. So now let's just talk about what just happened there underneath the hood. So in our integrated security and storage platform, a couple things happen that are, a number of things happen that are really critical. First of all, what happens is that whenever you create a file or modify a file, or it doesn't matter, any file that's in the system, what happens is it's taken and it's broken into fragments. Each one of those fragments are then individually encrypted with their own encryption keys. And then those fragments are distributed across any type of store that you have available. So that can be anything from obviously servers or cloud or desktops, laptops, phones, even removable disks. So essentially what happens here is that by doing this, your data is never kept in its entirety unless you want it in any one given location. So if you are breached, the only thing that a bad actor could get away with is encrypted fragments, which are really rendered useless. So this protects your data everywhere it's stored, at rest, in transit, all of that, and anybody you share it with. Now, when you're looking to use a file or access data, what the system does is it looks at all the variety of stores that have these different fragments in it, and then it builds it back on the fly from the best possible resources. So that means that you don't have the latency issues or performance issues, because it looks to see exactly where's the best resources to get that, so you get the information back quickly and it's seamless to the end user. So essentially what you do is you just go about your business, everything you're doing in Worldox right now, and all of this happens in the background, protecting your data automatically. So you need to never have to worry about it. This is all done by an automated policy engine that has real-time auditing attached to it. So you can be able to track every activity with your files, data, people you're sharing it with, what type of access do they have, what they're doing with it, and all of that. It also has a versioning and replication system that protects you from ransomware attacks. For example, if you're breached, you can be able to quickly and easily recover, and also provides a backup mechanism as well, all in one solution. So, Chris, can you just tell us a little bit, about how our solution works in the Worldox environment?
Sure, no problem, Jim. So this is a picture that comes from some elsewhere that has been used to describe how Worldox does document management. And you can see that you have a number of people involved in this. You've got enterprise users at the bottom who are using Worldox, and you've got also you have mobile users and remote users, because this is the world of COVID-19 where we all have to work from home. And the remote users are connected through the internet, through a firewall, that's what the wall logo is, back to the sort of the Worldox system. And Worldox does a number of things under the hood. It's responsible for the user interface, which I just showed you on Windows 10, which integrates email, fax, and voicemail, as you know. But it also has a mechanism for scanning mail and routing it elsewhere. And then under the hood, it's sort of server technology, manages data retention, storage, versioning, and deleted information, and so forth. So this is stuff that you've seen before. Now, next slide, please, Jim. This is a rather more complicated version of the same diagram. And I apologize because I am a techie, so I'm going to hit you with a little bit of tech. The picture is actually basically the same, but what it's now showing you is how the physical layout of the computers involved in this system actually map to what Worldox is doing. So on the right-hand side of this picture, you can see the same picture of the Worldox storage areas, where the retention policy and the behavioral system and the end users with those using the green arrows all update the information stored in Worldox's view of the world. Now that big green fat arrow is actually, this is an example deployment, not necessarily one you use, but you might use. But what this is showing you is the actual storage systems that are being used to store Worldox's information in this scenario are actually on a NAS box. And this particular NAS box is internal to the company, it's inside the firewall. And as you can see, the end users are then able to connect to that NAS box and use Worldox in the way that we've just discussed. And on the left-hand side, there's a slightly more detailed information of the same picture of the ones at the bottom. Now, the important thing to note here is that there are 2 disk drives attached to this NAS box in green, and Worldox is using them for all its information storage. But there are a number of other disk drives that are currently being unused. Next slide, please, Jim. This is what happens when you add AmiShare. When you add AmiShare underneath Worldox, so to speak, first of all, the Worldox data storage box that contains the archive, storage, purge, bin, and records management is now wholly owned and managed by AmiShare. All right, so Worldox continues as it did before, and it sees a world of this very large amount of storage. But underneath, the storage system itself is being managed by AmiShare, Kinnami's product. Now, what AmiShare can do is it can take advantage of all of the storage in the system. So as well as the NAS box that it was using before, you can now use the internal disks on the desktops for the enterprise users at the bottom. You can also use the mobile phone for that remote user at the top left. You can also use the laptop and desktop for that remote user at the top left. And note that that one now is able to use Worldox directly, because as far as Worldox is concerned, it's still connected to its own internal store. So you can now use Worldox remotely without necessarily worrying about virtual private networks and all that sort of stuff as well. You can use that as well if you want, but you don't need to. And lastly, of course, AmiShare can also use cloud services. So if you've got some very cheap storage like Amazon AWS S3, or you've got access to some data center, or you use Google Cloud or Microsoft Azure or whatever it might be, you can now use that too. Excuse me, this phone's always going off. So the bottom line is what AmiShare is giving you here is it's as well as securing all the information. Remember, it also provides the ability to use all the available data stores. You might not have to buy as much data storage as you thought if you use this system. And because it's creating copies in lots of different places, albeit encrypted, you now also have the redundancy, giving you a disaster recovery solution that Jim mentioned earlier. Next slide, please, Jim. So in summary, this is the first slide that we saw again, but this time it's showing that AmiShare is now running all the storage that Worldox is using. And there are some high-level benefits to that. First of all, it's transparent to the end user. The end user doesn't change what they do. You can use remote users as well. See, the icon at the top now has the little green Worldox icon in it, because there's a guy working on Worldox there, or a girl, or whoever. All the devices are protected by AmiShare, whether they're being used or not, for Worldox data at that particular moment. And all the storage devices that are available to that particular customer, that particular law firm, can potentially be now made available to Worldox. So the information can be distributed across them for performance, for productivity, for security concerns, whatever the particular primary goal is for that particular organization. Back to you, Jim.
Yeah, so specifically in the legal world, I think there's some key takeaways and pain that we can address with this integration with Worldox clients. So one is that your data is encrypted and everywhere, and you hold the encryption keys. So files are protected no matter where they're stored, and protected no matter who you share them with. Ransomware, again, as I mentioned before, one of the challenges, and Chris can kind of talk a little bit more around how we do this, but we're able to identify changes in files and anomalies around that would show that would indicate some sort of malware that could lead to a ransomware situation. So we're able to identify the problems, and then we're able to recover quickly from it because of the versioning system. You're able to rebuild from stores that are located elsewhere. Just take the infected different elements out of the equation and rebuild from good. And in fact, that happens seamlessly, because you can just come into AmiShare from a new PC, for instance, and instantly your data is going to be there. So compliance, there's all sorts of different compliance issues that, especially if we just look at healthcare with HIPAA. I know there's a lot of healthcare related attorneys that are Worldox clients, and teams from healthcare companies that use Worldox. The end user and administrative roles are kept separate. Now, I know that there's a lot of small to medium law firms that are involved with Worldox, and so they don't have a dedicated IT department. But separating these roles is really important, because it lets the users focus on creating and using data and not administering it, and vice versa. So it increases productivity, but it also increases protection, because the end users control the data, but the admin doesn't have access to it. They only control where it's stored and being able to monitor activities, grant, revoke access, all those different types of things through our tools. And then what it does is it removes this patchwork problem that is really kept us exposed for way too long. So by integrating data security, data protection, and data availability into one solution, it removes these gaps that keep leaving us exposed to all of these different threats that are currently out there and growing exponentially. So it's a problem that is not going to go away with the world we're living in. More and more of you are having to work remotely and really need to rely on secure data and resources in this regard. And by having this integrated solution in Worldox, it leaves you with a whole new set of insurance and protections that you never had available before. So with that, I think we would like to see if there's any questions that have been put in the chat at this point. And I think, Rebecca, you probably have some questions, or anybody on the line. We can open up the mics, and we'd love to answer your questions and get the conversation going.
Yeah, I always have questions. So I think, you've talked about all the different threats, but the threats that we've seen more than one customer be affected by, one of them is ransomware. So I guess, what can you tell us about exactly what your solution can do in the instance of a ransomware issue?
Okay, I'll talk about that one. Okay, so I'll try and keep the tech out of it. There are really two kinds of ransomware threat that have emerged over the last few years. The first one, which did actually happen first, is theft. And what they're really doing is they're breaking into your computer system and they're encrypting all the documents. And then, sorry, this isn't really theft. This is kind of theft. But then they're demanding money. Okay, so and what they do is they say, give us the money or Bitcoin or whatever it is, and in return we'll decrypt your documents. Now there's a number of problems with this, but in the real world. First of all, ransomware has bugs, and there have been cases where you can't decrypt the data because their software that encrypted it has bugs and is broken. And there are people who have paid the bill and not got their data back. Second problem is it is actually illegal to pay ransomware bills according to the FBI. And just recently, they've actually tightened up on that because allegedly, and I don't want to get into trouble with any lawyers on the phone, but allegedly, insurance companies, among others, decided that it was cheaper to pay the bill than it was to face the sheer nightmare of trying to rebuild everything from backup tapes, assuming your backups have worked. So that's the kind of the world that we live in of ransomware. The second kind of ransomware is actually now where they leak data. They actually steal it and they ransom you to try and and in return, they won't broadcast it to everybody. So those are the two kinds of threat. Now, here's what we can do about it. Now, with ransomware, there's two parts to it. First of all, you want to detect it when it happens. And secondly, you want to recover from it when it happens. Now, on the detection front, as Jim mentioned earlier, because we are watching the exact documents that are changing, we know before they've been encrypted, because we're doing the encryption, we spot changes in those documents at a very early stage in those changes' life. And one of the things we also do, for a number of reasons that I won't bore you with, is we actually compare the current version of the document with the previous version. So in other words, we know how it's changed. Now what that means is we can spot a very large change in a document. Typically when you edit a document, you can make big changes, but lots of edits are actually just a small number of changes. And so, and what this basically changes is the entropy level of the document. Entropy is a degree of a measure of randomness, for those of you who can't remember your high school physics. And so what we're really saying is, if this document has changed a lot, and it's become a lot more random at the same time, this looks suspicious. Now, if we can correlate that across a number of different documents, because the ransomware is going after a number of different things at about the same time, now we've got an increasing likelihood of the chance of this thing being a problem. So now what you've done is with a little bit of AI, and we all heard about how AI is coming into things, we can use that to make a good estimate, a good guess as to whether or not there's been a ransomware attack. Now this works even if the ransomware has been lurking for months on your systems, because what you do is you make it watch for the important files. you don't really care if somebody's music video has been edited potentially, but if somebody's case documents have been changed, then you care a lot. And the ransomware ultimately has to do that if it wants to encrypt it. So it has to make the change. So that's detection. On the recovery side, there's two parts to it. First of all, we have a versioning system, much like Worldox's versioning system, and our versions are immutable. Once written, they can never be changed. They can only be deleted, and only by system administrators. So the ransomware, which normally tries to delete unencrypted versions of data, can't do it with our system. It's just not possible. So without breaking our entire system, I should say, but that's the usual caveat with any software. So what that means is the data that has been encrypted also exists unchanged in the AmiShare system. So what you can do is, if you've got another PC already installed with Worldox and AmiShare, if you just go and log into that PC and use Worldox and AmiShare, and just go back to the previous version of the file, the one that wasn't encrypted by AmiShare, by the ransomware. So now you've got your data back immediately. Now, to improve that a little bit, that works well if the ransomware has encrypted all the files at about the same time. But if you've got ransomware that's lurked for a very long time, months, years, whatever, you do not want to try and work out which backup tapes over the last 2 years are the ones you need to go back to find the latest versions of the files that have not been edited with ransomware. Instead, we believe we can help with that. Because what we can do is, remember this increase in entropy? What we can do is we can go back through all the versions of all the files that may or may not have been affected and look for sudden increases of ransomware. And because those files are still live, there's no time there's no recovery time other than bringing it back from whatever storage you're on, which might be cheaper, slower storage, but it's ultimately online. So what we can then do is promote that to be the current version. So this gives us an ability to automatically do a pretty good guess of restoring from ransomware in the event of an encryption attack. So what this means overall is, do not pay that bill. Now, if you do pay the bill, and what we can't help you with is if they've stolen the data out of your network and then they broadcast it on the internet or whatever they're going to do with it. That's something we can't do. But at least you'll know about it, and you'll also know exactly which versions of which files they've got. So you can decide whether it actually matters if they're broadcasting some file labeled My Critical Financial Report of 2013, when actually what they've got is something else that somebody's just called it, some data that isn't valuable at all anymore. Because what you can do is, which file they've stolen, you can now go and see whether or not it actually has any real impact. So although we can't stop them leaking it, what we can do is be aware of the problem and mitigate it, so you can be ready to talk to whomever needs to be talked to, in the event the data gets out there. So it's quite a lot we can do with ransomware. Does that answer your question?
It does, although I will point out that the importance of the data depends on the company, because I actually used to work for a law firm that did intellectual property for entertainment, so that music video could have been important.
Absolutely. I was trying to
but that's why there always has to be, sorry.
That's all right.
Go for it.
I was just saying,
I was just going to say,
example wouldn't be relevant to this, but you're absolutely right. It does depend on the sphere of, what I meant was my allegedly pirated music videos or something.
Oh, don't say pirated, because that's what my old firm used to do, was go after people like you.
Exactly.
So
there have been people who have used company machines to store pirated data, but in order to stop it getting detected, they've given it some innocuous name like case file 234.
Yeah.
So that's which is another whole problem, by the way, for an organization. But we won't get into that.
Yes. But this does bring up, in fact, an important thing that, there are a lot of firms out there right now that maybe don't have IT people on staff, or they have an outside IT company or something that they work with. But for situations like these, and just in general for making decisions about data and how to address certain problems, this is why the lawyers do need to be involved in some of these decisions, because they're the ones that have a better idea of what's in the data, of what data is more important to protect and what data maybe you don't care as much about. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that you talked about just now, you spoke a little bit about how you're storing every version of the file throughout history unless an administrator goes in and deletes it. So how does your solution differ from, I mean, would you consider it a backup solution? Would you advise people to have a separate backup solution in addition to what you offer?
Okay, I'll take that one too. Fair disclosure, I was one of the software engineers a long time ago who worked on VeritasNet Backup, which I believe is still the enterprise backup system of choice. So I do know a bit about backup. Okay, so with my official backup hat on, I would always say that you don't have a true disaster recovery solution unless you have an offline backup that is separated from the internet. Having said that, the world has moved on, and it's questionable as to how practical that is in the real world. What I would say with my AmiShare Kinnami hat on is that you don't, depending on your tolerance for security threats and how well you're doing it, that may not be true anymore. And there are two schools of thought about this, and in the data protection IT worlds, there are furious arguments about this all the time, which is why I'm giving you both sides of it. I'm trying to be fair. The reason why I would say you don't need it is this. Because the versioning system in AmiShare is immutable, you can't change it. That means that it is trustworthy, and there are integrity checks to verify that, by the way. So what that means is, so long as you've got that version of that file somewhere, it can't be tampered with by any malware, which is why people always say you should have an offline backup. Therefore, or if it has been tampered with in some way, you know that it's been tampered with, so you won't use it. So that's why I would say it's not so critical to have a separate offline backup system today. But again, there are two schools of thought, and there may be people who would violently disagree with me about that. I would say it's not necessary, even though I've been in data protection. The second, so with all that
Rebecca,
can I just finish? With all that having been said, I would say this is a credible backup solution, data protection and disaster recovery solution, and that was exactly our intention when we designed this, so that you do not have to use a whole separate backup mechanism to support this. Over to you, Sujeesh.
Yeah, one other thing I want to add, Rebecca, is I think this is from the legal sector as well, where there are also situations where data destruction is important. So data can only be stored for a certain amount of time, then it needs to be cleaned out. You know, those are all the kind of places where traditional backup tends to fail, right? Because you put it somewhere in some long-term archive, you forget about it, and then when it comes time to actually have to delete all that data, you got to now go back and try to figure out where it all was, find it, delete it, etc. Our system makes it much more dynamic, right? So Chris and Jim mentioned this policy engine that we have that sort of manages all of that information. So the data destruction could potentially be another rule that's just programmed into that policy engine, right? That says, you know, after a certain amount of time, whatever that period is, you know, go and delete all that information, or, you know, blow up the encryption keys such that, you know, you don't have access to that data anymore. So there's a lot of things that we can do dynamically that support compliance regimes and things like that around the data, which traditional backup solutions can't do.
Yeah, actually, this gives me an idea that this could have implications for legal hold situations as well.
Yes. One of the other nice things about this solution, by the way, is that hypothetically, if the AmiShare system is storing some data on a machine that is beyond your control, somebody else's IT data center, then which you can do if you want to, then you can't stop them from not running a backup system. But the good news is what they back up is the encrypted data. So what that means is if you've destroyed the encryption keys, those backups they have are also worthless. Therefore, no one could subpoena your data from someone else's machine because those encryption keys don't exist anymore. So the data destruction thing that Sujeesh brought up is actually a very interesting problem because, as we all know, once it's out on the internet, it's very hard to get rid of it. Well, this is a way to accomplish it so long as the data have been encrypted by a key that you control. So you then have to prove that you have destroyed your keys, which is also a difficult thing to prove. But what you can do is you can, obviously in our system, key destruction is one of the things that gets audited. And it's not something we encourage rapidly because once it's destroyed, it's destroyed. There is no recovery. But it is possible. So in the event that you actually need a facility like this, we can provide.
Yeah, and I think to Rebecca's point on the legal hold, absolutely right. So because the system is also auditing very closely, access and movement and usage of data, we can also, as part of that legal hold process, now be able to sort of irrefutably prove that data has not been touched or tampered once that hold has gone into effect as well. So it's a combination of both the management of data, but also the auditing of all of the activities that are happening around that data.
So you showed us a little bit, you showed us opening Worldox documents and that Worldox documents were being controlled with your system, but how does the product actually work with Worldox as such to make sure that all the data gets encrypted? And you mentioned some things about different operating systems as well.
So that is an implementation detail, of course, and there are a number of ways that can be accomplished. Right now, the way it's been working in this demonstration is that Worldox today uses a network file system drive, which is normally provided by some file server. What we've done is we've provided an alternative file server running under some Unix operating system, and basically we've changed the file system that's being used to store that information. Instead of a standard file system like Windows has NTFS that you may have heard of. I know Rebecca knows this, but Unix also has a well-known set of file systems, a number of them. We've written our own one that basically handles this encryption stuff. There are other ways to do the integration with Worldox, and there are more efficient ways. And over time, as our relationship grows, we would like to do more. At the moment, the software runs this particular Unix is a Mac Unix operating system, Mac OS is Unix, but I also have it in alpha form running on Linux, which is a popular file server operating system for cloud services, which is why we're doing it. And of course, we'll be doing Windows as well. So in the nearer term, we expect to have this thing running on Windows, Mac, and Linux. Especially Linux servers. But we've also done most of the work to port it to other versions of Unix, the well-known series of Unix called BSD, which is used not so well known as Linux, but it's used by people like Netflix because they want something even more reliable than Linux. And then of course there'll be the phone operating systems as well. I showed you a mobile phone in that PowerPoint, and we absolutely believe we'll be supporting those as well. It's just a matter of time. As for Worldox integration, the more platforms Worldox supports, we want to help them. We want to help Worldox support those platforms as well by providing our security and data management system underneath it.
That sounds interesting. And actually, because we have an iOS app, the idea of ensuring that all of the content that comes from Worldox through the iOS app is also controlled through your application is definitely interesting to me.
We can certainly talk about that. iOS is a tricky one because Apple controls the operating system, as I'm sure you've probably discovered in your work.
Oh yes, Apple makes everything tricky.
Well, they're trying to impose security, and that one of the ways they do that is they stop you messing with their kernel, which is fair enough, but you have to trust them. But anyway, so what I would say is we actually have a number of we're sort of doing some amount of work with DoD now in various things, and one of the things that we have considered and would be interested in doing in the future is supporting the Android operating system, which is actually approved by DoD because they get to control the operating system. For iOS, there are things that we can certainly do to get most of the way there. If you've ever used Dropbox or Google Drive on iOS, iOS now has a mechanism to share files through Dropbox and so on. We will be able to do at least as well as that. So you can imagine that you're sharing destinations as well as being Dropbox and iCloud Drive and whatever else you might have on your iOS machine would also include AmiShare. And then, so in other words, you would then be able to, all the information could be stored locally on your phone using AmiShare, and it would only be accessible through the AmiShare app on the phone. Now, beyond that, we are limited by whatever APIs Apple allows us to use, and they sandbox the applications between the different from the different vendors and indeed from themselves very, very heavily. So you have to use their APIs. But we absolutely believe that it's a platform that we need to support, and we will do the absolute best we can. And if Dropbox can do it, we can do it too. It's possible.
Yes, actually, that's the impediment to while you can access documents from Worldox on a Mac right now, our client does not work on a Mac because of that separation between applications that they that they do so well.
Yes, it's quite tricky, believe me. Well, you found out as well.
Yes. So let's see. We don't have a whole lot of time, and we've talked a little bit about retention, and I think we've talked about compliance.
Compliance, we believe, is going to be, there are actually two big enterprise markets that we're interested in the commercial space. One is compliance, which is, because we know regulation's coming. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about GDPR or the California Privacy Act, CCPA now. You can be certain, though, we're going to see more of those, and hopefully we won't see, 70 of them in the 50 states of the US. Hopefully we'll end up with kind of one. It'd be nice. But you can be certain that every country or region in the world is going to be developing one. So compliance with all of that, as well as with healthcare stuff, is inevitable. And the problem is, and also we can be certain governments are toughening up. They'll want to see proof of compliance, not just hypotheticals. Now, AmiShare is rather cool because, as you saw, it can store information on stores all over the place. Well, it also can dynamically change that because of this policy engine that Sujeesh talked about. So, for example, let's say I've got a laptop and I'm plugged into New Jersey. All right, let's say this is Rebecca's laptop, and she's happily using Worldox and happily using AmiShare underneath it, and she's plugged into a local area network in New Jersey, and the system knows that. So what that means is the system can improve her performance by copying the files off some server in her office actually onto her laptop and secure them there because it's considered sufficiently trustworthy when in New Jersey. But now let's say she trips on a plane, this is a world outside COVID, and travels to California where the Privacy Act is different, or the privacy rules are different. The system logs into the local area network in the hotel she's at, and all of a sudden, now it knows that the compliance rules for California or for New Jersey or both of them are being broken. So what it can do is it can delete the data off her local internal disk on her laptop. Meanwhile, Rebecca can still work as before because now she can access the data across the internet, across the local area network and then across the internet and carry on working. She'll notice a little bit of a degradation in performance, but she won't actually notice anything else. All the files are in the same place. She doesn't have to do any magic. She logs in the same way. Nothing has changed as far other than performance, perhaps. When she gets back on a plane and goes back to New Jersey, the system realizes she's back home again. It can put the files back again on her laptop without her worrying about it. Now, that is great. Think about lawyers who have to travel between jurisdictions where they're worried about client-attorney privilege. The US government now can force you to show the contents of your laptop as you enter and leave the country. And that is causing a lot of concern in the legal industry, especially in foreign countries. But with this, it's not a problem. When you unplug from the UK or from France or wherever your law firm is based, it takes the data off there. So there isn't any data on your laptop. And you can still work remotely as though you were working before. Compliance is a big deal. And the nice thing we can do is we can do a lot of it automatically. It's just a matter of having a suitable policy definition. So that's one of the reasons why we think there's an area of growth there. The second area is around cloud management and cloud migration and all that sort of stuff. We've heard a lot about how cloud makes things cheaper, and that's true, it does, because Amazon, Google, and Microsoft and the rest of them are very, very good at running data centers. And so you can indeed, if you know how to do it, you can take advantage of them. But the problem is the services change. They offer new services all the time. They mess around with the pricing. You have to keep on top of it. Well, the problem with that is once they've got the data into their particular cloud store, data is big. It costs a lot of money to move it around. And all those cloud guys let you upload for free, but download costs money. So one of the things we can do by sitting in between your data and whatever cloud services you have is we can let you balance the use of a particular cloud service with cost. Because if a new service comes available from a particular cloud and you want to start using it, set it up, change the policy definition, and data will slowly be migrated off the old place and onto the new place, which is cheaper. Likewise, if you decide to switch clouds, you plug in the new cloud service. Let's say you switch to Microsoft Azure, for example, from Google, then the system will gradually migrate the data from Google to Microsoft Azure, and then when the data's all gone, you can turn off your Google account without disrupting any of the end users. They can still do all their work while this is going on. And it might take months, by the way, if you have a lot of data, months to go across the internet. So compliance and cloud data migration and ongoing management at the enterprise are huge topics for us.
That sounds really interesting. Actually, another good question came in. Who has control of the encryption keys?
Very, very good question. The answer is whoever created the data. What AmiShare does is one of the things it does is it establishes ownership of the data of a file, as well as who is permitted to access it. And so consequently, it knows who owns the data. That means in order for, let's say I have some data and I want to share it with Rebecca, what actually happens is Rebecca and I have to exchange a secret that we each know that only the other one has, okay? Then I can then provide an encryption key to Rebecca that allows her to decrypt the data so she can actually read it. She can't update or change my data, no one can except me. And all I can do is create new versions of it. But what she can do is she can read it, which means she can copy it and work on it herself and then make her copy available to me. And that's basically how collaboration works. What it also means is we can establish a trail, an audit trail of ownership and of the versions that span multiple users, which is what Sujeesh was talking about earlier. So in terms of encryption keys, I personally control the encryption keys of the data which I create. There is one additional thing. An administrator is not able to grant access because they don't necessarily have the encryption keys after all, right? Not unless they've been explicitly granted. But what they can do is revoke them, because to revoke is easy, just delete the keys. So while I can share stuff with Rebecca, Sujeesh, who's the admin for our particular office, Sujeesh can revoke those keys and stop the two of us from collaborating if he deems it necessary. So in terms of control, it's split between the end user and the admin. End user can create and stop, create and revoke. Admin can always revoke. Now that's essential so that the admin can revoke keys for machines or people or whatever. Let's say somebody's gone and left their laptop on a train. You want to revoke the keys immediately. Well, the admin can do that.
So is this something that's simple enough that one of those law firms without internal IT can handle themselves?
It would have to be, and it will be. When we get to a small, medium enterprise version of the product, that's exactly one of the things that we'll have to be able to make really simple. Because I again, come from the backup world. We used to joke at Veritas that when people complained about Restore, I said, we don't sell Restore, we sell backup. But actually, it's Restore that matters, right? People just do backup, which is insurance, so that they can restore. The other thing that happens with Restore is that you usually do it when you're in a panic. Veritas was active after 9/11 and was one of the companies that was trying to help put Wall Street back together again after it got blown up. And we learned very, very hard lessons. And actually, we came out of it reasonably popular with our customers about how that's a whole new level of disaster. But it is absolutely true that when you're trying to do something in an emergency, the last thing you want is complication. So I would say that key revocation, which is what you were specifically talking about, Rebecca, isn't something that needs to be easy for people who aren't IT professionals. It needs to be easy for everybody, because even the IT professionals aren't going to do it that often. And when you're in a hurry and you're facing a major emergency and you need to do it right now, the last thing you want is to go and find some silly option buried in something that you can't find, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, it is, and yes, it will be.
That's actually a point that I make to people all the time when I'm talking to them about security, which is that nobody should ever have an account that has too many privileges, because IT people especially are the ones who get awakened in the middle of the night about an emergency, And I don't know about the rest of you, but when I'm awakened out of a dead sleep in the middle of the night, I really don't want to, if I have to do a whole bunch of manual processes and think on my feet in that situation, nobody is going to do a good job at that. So you want to make sure that all of your people have accounts that they use that just have regular user privileges.
Absolutely. Everybody makes mistakes, IT people as well. And you're talking about the principle of least privilege, which is now being remarketed as zero trust. It's a very, very good idea. We actively support that as well. I mean, one of the things our system does is it literally restricts access to the people who are permitted to use the data by using encryption, which makes it hard to accidentally grant access to someone else. But there are still things that you've got to be very careful about. And key revocation, especially, remember we talked about data destruction earlier. If you destroy your data, there is nothing we can do unless you're the NSA or something like that, and you can and all the encryption algorithms are actually secretly broken. There really is nothing you can do. The estimates today for the modern encryption algorithms that we all use, that's the AES 256 and AES 512 algorithms, which are the standard encryptions everything uses now, any banking, anything. They estimate that it takes the time between now and the heat death of the galaxy to using modern computer technology to revert that encryption by brute force. So it's gone. Data is destroyed if you lose those keys. So again, you have to be very careful about that. And this is the kind of thing that you can imagine. You get a lot of testing and a lot of big things saying, are you really, really sure? Type in this sequence. And in many, many, many cases, you may want to get approval from someone else. Just have two people do it together to make sure it doesn't happen accidentally.
That's not a bad idea. So I think it might be time to turn this back over to Hella.
Yes, I really like the last idea that yes, maybe have someone double checking before you delete it. That sounds good. So we really thank you for joining us today. Is there anything else? Either one of you have any last things you would like to add? Or, oh, you're muted.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to thank everybody for putting this together. It's a great opportunity to get in front of you and your clients to kind of show them, the path that we're looking to move forward with you on all this, and what the capabilities are and the pain that we could relieve. I think one of the things that was really telling, is about, how do we really facilitate improvement for a lot of these small to medium enterprises, because there are a lot of challenges in that regard. And so, one of the things I think that didn't come out in all this is that, that with our policy engine, a lot of these things can be set up and it's set up for autonomy, that these things can happen automatically so that you can sleep well at night, knowing as conditions change or threats are detected or, problems come up, that the system is capable of handling it until you can pay attention to it. So, I think it's just great. We're really excited about the opportunities working with Worldox, addressing these issues for your clients, and for you taking the time to let us reach out to your customers and show them the path forward that we're looking to take with you.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much, and Chris and Jim and Sujeesh, we've enjoyed hearing about all the details about Kinnami today, and we are going to post a recording of the webinar, so anyone who was not able to attend, they can still get a chance to see it. And to all of those who did attend, thank you so much, and we hope everyone will join us for another presentation the next few weeks, and wishing everybody a good weekend.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.